When I saw my husband's car parked outside my son's fiancée's apartment that night, I thought it was just a coincidence. But coincidences don't last long, not when your whole life is about to fall apart. I still remember the glow of the streetlight that night, how it shimmered faintly on the hood of his silver sedan, the one he swore he only drove for errands. It was late, past 11. My son Daniel had just called to say goodnight, sounding excited about his upcoming wedding. I was sitting on the porch with my cup of chamomile tea, thinking about how lucky we all were. It was supposed to be a season of joy, wedding plans, family gatherings, laughter. But life has a way of shifting without warning. You think you're standing on solid ground until it cracks under your feet. That night, when I saw that familiar car parked outside Lily's small apartment building, something inside me paused. My husband, Richard, was supposed to be on a business dinner. He'd been taking a lot of, though. At first, always networking, always too busy to talk. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Lily was Daniel's fiancée, sweet, polite, the kind of young woman any mother would be proud to welcome into her family. She worked at a local flower shop and had a soft laugh that reminded me of spring mornings. I told myself, maybe he's helping her with something for the wedding. Maybe. But a voice in my chest whispered, "Don't ignore what you see." I sipped my tea and tried to push the thought away. Just a few weeks earlier, everything in our home had felt warm, familiar. Richard and I had been married for 28 years. We weren't the kind of couple that argued loudly. No, ours was a quiet companionship, a shared morning coffee, a knowing look across the dinner table. Our love had aged like an old song, gentle, predictable, a little faded around the edges. Daniel was our only child. After years of struggling to conceive, his birth had been a miracle. He was the light of our lives, strong-willed but kind, ambitious but grounded. When he introduced us to Lily 2 years ago, I remember thinking, finally, someone who truly sees him. She had this grace about her, this way of making everyone in the room feel at ease. The first time she came over for dinner, she brought homemade pie, apple cinnamon, still warm. Richard couldn't stop complimenting her baking. "Bricky peebrihi, she's a keeper," he'd said, smiling at me over his glass of wine. I'd smiled back, proud and a little emotional. Over time, Lily became like a daughter to me. We'd go dress shopping together, share recipes, talk about her parents who lived in another state. She'd call me Mom, sometimes by accident, and each time she did, it melted something inside me. When Daniel proposed to her last winter, we celebrated as a family. Candles, music, the smell of roasted chicken filling the house. I remember Richard standing up to make a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice steady, his eyes glancing briefly at me and then at her. Aber, I didn't notice the flicker in his expression back then. Maybe I didn't want to. The wedding plans began right away. Lily and I spent hours together, picking flowers, choosing colors, debating over table settings. She'd often come by even when Daniel was at work, saying she just needed a woman's opinion. Richard would sometimes join us after his workday, joking around, making Lily laugh. Brie bruf, or it felt harmless. Family, but then small things began to shift. Richard started dressing differently. More cologne, nicer shirts. He bought a new phone for work. He'd smile at texts and quickly put it away when I walked in. Once I caught a faint trace of perfume on his jacket. Not mine, not my scent. Something floral, delicate. I remember breathing it in and telling myself, Lily works with flowers. Maybe he stopped by the shop. Ibrahim, but a woman knows. She may silence the voice in her heart, but she hears it. A week before that night, Lily had stopped coming around as often. When she did, she seemed distracted. Her eyes darted away when I mentioned Daniel's name. Once, she even called him Rick by mistake, short for Richard. We laughed it off, but it lodged somewhere deep inside me. Daniel didn't notice. He was too busy with work, trying to earn enough for their honeymoon. "Mom," he'd said one evening, Lily's been stressed about the wedding. I think she's just tired. I nodded, pretending to believe him. But in my gut, a quiet unease had begun to bloom. Then came that night, the night that changed everything. I'd been unable to sleep, so I took a short drive to clear my mind. As I passed by Lily's street, I saw Richard's car parked under that flickering street light. My first instinct was disbelief he wouldn't. But I slowed down, watched, waited, and then, through the curtain of her living room window, I saw movement. 2 figures, close together. One of them, my husband, the other, my son's fiancée, Eberth. They weren't talking, they were holding each other. Heber. My breath caught. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For a moment, time dissolved. All I could hear was the slow thud of my heartbeat and the distant hum of the city. My mind screamed, "No, no, no." I drove home in silence, tears blurring the road. The man I had shared my life with, and the woman who was about to marry my son. The world felt colder that night. And by morning, everything inside me had changed. When dawn came, I sat at the kitchen table long before anyone else woke up. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your bones. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, the sound suddenly louder than usual. I stared at the empty chair across from me, Richard's chair. I could still smell his cologne faintly in the air from the night before, crisp, woody, familiar. But something about that scent made my stomach twist now. It was the same smell I'd caught lingering in Lily's hallway, just beneath the sweetness of her lilac candles. She came down, stairs around 7, freshly showered, humming to himself like nothing was wrong. "Morning," he said, kissing the top of my head. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my eyes on my coffee. He poured himself a cup, sat across from me, and scrolled on his phone. For a moment I studied him, the slight smile on his lips, the ease in his body. How could someone sit there so calmly after what I saw? "Tibri, what time did you get home last night?" I asked softly. He glanced up, casual as ever. "Late. That client dinner ran long. You know how these things go." I nodded. "Didn't know business dinners took place near Maplewood Apartments?" His hand froze, just for a split second. Then he chuckled. "Oh, that area. I think I passed by on my way back." "Why?" "Just curious," I said. "I saw your car there." He looked at me then, really looked. His expression didn't crumble, didn't shift, it was controlled. He smiled faintly, leaned back in his chair. You must have seen someone else." "Car, love. There are dozens of silver sedans out there." I nodded again, pretending to believe him. But inside, something fragile cracked. For days after that, I lived between disbelief and suspicion. I wanted proof, yet feared finding it. Every glance, every text tone, every small absence became a thread I wanted to pull, but pulling meant unraveling my entire world. Lily called less and less. When she did, her voice carried an edge I hadn't noticed before. Nervous laughter, short answers. She canceled our dress fitting due to a headache, then postponed our cake tasting because of work. "She's just O'Neill, poor boy, thought nothing of it. She's just overwhelmed," he said with a smile that broke my heart. "She wants everything to be perfect." Well, she was so proud of her. I began, so sure of their love. I began noticing that Richard was gone most evenings. He claimed late meetings again, but each night he came home with that faint trace of perfume on his jacket. At first, I'd quietly hang it up, wash my hands and sit by myself, staring at the soft glow of the living room lamp. But one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. "Richard," I said as he walked in, placing his briefcase down, "you've been working a lot lately." He smiled tiredly. "I'm doing it for us, to make things easier." with the wedding and everything. Wergbri. The wedding, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. Ibri. He looked at me curiously. Oh, what? What? I shook my head. Nothing. I just miss you, that's all. That night I lay awake beside him, his breathing wake beside him. His breathing was steady, peaceful. I turned and watched his face, the man I thought I knew better than anyone. Brr. How many lies can fit behind one calm expression? A few days later, I stopped by Lily's flower shop unannounced. I told myself I wanted to surprise her, maybe bring her some lunch, check in on her. But deep down, I was searching. When I walked in, the air was thick with the scent of roses and eucalyptus. Lily was behind the counter, arranging a bouquet of white tulips. He looked startled when she saw me. Bruchra. Mom, Mrs. Caldwell, what a surprise, she stammered. Her hands trembled slightly, the stems slipping from her fingers. Brr. I was just nearby, I said softly. Thought I'd see how you were doing. You've been quiet lately. Brew, she forced a smile. Oh, I've just been busy, last-minute wedding chaos. Roo. I nodded, watching her. Of course. You must be excited. Daniel is. Abrihi, her eyes flickered. Yeah, he's wonderful. There was something in her tone, not affection, but guilt. As we talked, I noticed a small gold bracelet on her wrist. It wasn't one I'd seen before, not Daniel's style. It looked expensive, familiar, because I had one just like it. A matching pair Richard and I bought years ago during our anniversary trip. I reached out gently. That's a lovely bracelet, dear. Where did you get it? She froze. Oh, it was a gift. From Daniel. No, she said too quickly. Just someone and bra. Oh. I smiled faintly. Someone who knows your taste very well, I see. Ibri, her face turned pale. Ibri, I didn't push further. I simply stepped past around the shop and said But as I left, the bell above the door chiming softly behind me. My heart was thundering. I didn't need anyone to tell me the truth. I could feel it pressing against my chest, heavy and undeniable. That night, I searched through Richard's desk drawer while he showered. I'd never done that before. In nearly 3 decades of marriage, I'd never snooped. But desperate hearts do desperate things. Inside, among his papers and receipts, I found an envelope, one of those glossy ivory ones from Lily's bridal stationery set. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. I recognized her handwriting instantly. You make me feel alive again. I don't know how to stop this, but I don't want to. No name, no signature, but the perfume on the paper, that same floral scent told me everything. I folded it fully, slid it back where I found it, and closed the drawer. Then I went to bed beside the man who had broken my heart and pretended to sleep. The next morning, I stood at the kitchen sink watching sunlight pour through the window, my mind silent but sharp. The woman my son loved, the woman who was supposed to become my daughter, was sharing a secret with my husband. It wasn't suspicion anymore, it was truth. Abri and I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. The day the truth came crashing down wasn't dramatic in the way movies make it seem. There were no thunderclaps, no shouting in the rain. It was quiet, painfully quiet, like the air before a storm breaks. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Daniel had dropped by for lunch, all smiles and chatter, talking about the wedding rehearsal and how Lily had been a little distant lately, but probably just nervous. I listened, nodding, forcing a smile that hurt my face. My heart was thudding so loudly I could barely hear him. Ibra Richard was in the backyard trimming the hedges, pretending to be busy. I could feel the tension between us, like static in the air. He hadn't said much to me all weekend, probably sensing that I knew. After lunch, Daniel left for work, promising to bring Lily by later that evening to finalize a few plans. I waited until I heard his car fade down the street. Then I turned to Richard. "Huber?" "Sit down," I said, my voice. "What? Too calm." He looked at me, uneasy. "What's this about?" I placed a small envelope on the table, the one I'd found in his drawer. His eyes flicked down, then back up. He didn't even pretend not to recognize it. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "You went through my things?" "Avery." "I went through the remains of my marriage, thy marriage." Asa said softly. I said softly, "Jaw tight, Avery." He stayed silent, jaw tight. "Tell me it's not true," I whispered. "Tell me I'm wrong, Richard." He didn't answer. That silence, that terrible, heavy silence, was louder than any confession. "Abru, her," I said, my voice trembling now. "Lily, my In's fiancée." "How long?" He exhaled slowly, then said, "It wasn't supposed to happen." I let out a shaky laugh. "It wasn't supposed to happen? That's what you have to say?" "Brr," he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low. "It started months ago. She came to me for advice. She was scared about marrying Daniel, said she wasn't ready, that she felt trapped. I tried to comfort her, to help, and then—" "Ebru," he stopped, looked at me. "It just happened." I stared at him. This man I'd shared my bed, my home, my life with. I wanted to scream, but my body wouldn't move. "You betrayed your son," I said finally, my words trembling. Just trembling, not just me. "Him. The boy who looks up to you." Ibr, he dropped his gaze. "I know. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Do you love her?" "Brew," he hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Aberson, I don't know," he said quietly. "She makes me feel dubry." "Don't finish that," I snapped. My voice came out sharper than I meant. "Don't you dare tell me she makes you fee. El alive, you've destroyed us, Richard. All of us." Ibra, for a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the ticking clock filled the silence again, steady, cruel. Finally I said, Does Daniel know? Bree, no," he said quickly. "And he never has to. Neither so has to. We ended it." "Ma." I laughed bitterly. When did it? "So what? That makes it better?" "Brr," he rubbed his face. "It was a mistake, Anne, a terrible one. Please don't tell him, you'll ruin his life." "Brr." I stared at him in disbelief. Disbelief. "I'll ruin his life? You already have." Ibra, he stood then, pacing, desperate. "He loves her, Anne. He's happy. If you tell him he'll never recover, he'll lose both of us." "Ibrahim." I looked up at him, my voice breaking. "He's already lost you, Richard. You just don't have the courage to see it yet." That evening, Daniel came home with Lily. I had to compose myself, smile, cook dinner, pretend everything was fine. But inside, I was hollow. Lily's eyes met mine across the table, and for the first time she couldn't hold my gaze. Her hands trembled. As she lifted her fork, Ibri Daniel was laughing about something from work, oblivious to the storm around him. When he excused himself to take a call, the room went still. Abra Seize Lily looked at me, her face pale. "Mrs. Caldwell," she whispered. I can explain. Yibr Kuiper," I put down my fork. "Please don't, I already know." Thibr, her lips trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear I didn't." I kept my voice steady. "You're marrying my son Lily, and you were with his father." "Brew," she shook her head frantically. "It's over. I ended it. I was confused, lost. He was just there for me." "Aber." "Stop." I raised a hand, my tone calm but firm. "You don't need to explain what I already understand too well. You were lonely, he was weak, and both of you decided to find comfort in the most unforgivable place." Aber, she covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. For a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. Tibri shook her head. "Does Daniel know?" I asked softly. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please don't tell him, please. It will destroy him." I looked at her. This young woman who had once called me Mom. "Maybe he deserves to know the truth," I said. "Maybe he deserves to know the truth," I said. "Maybe everyone does." "Abri," she looked up, terrified. "You wouldn't." I didn't answer. Just then, Daniel walked back into the room, cheerful as ever. "What are you two whispering about?" "Cree," Lily quickly wiped her eyes. "Just wedding nerves," she said, forcing a smile. I looked at my son, at the kindness in his face, and my heart ached. How could I tell him? How could I not? Dinner went on in painful silence. When they left, Richard avoided my eyes. Lily didn't say goodbye, and I stood by the window watching their cars disappear into the distance. My hands were trembling, but my heart felt strangely still. I knew what I had to do next, because silence, I realized, was just another form of betrayal. That night, after the house fell into silence, I sat at the edge of our bed, the same bed that had once been a sanctuary of trust and warmth. Now it felt foreign. Every pillow, every crease in the sheets carried a history I no longer believed in. Richard was in the study, pretending to work. I could hear the low hum of the desk lamp and the faint clack of his keyboard. I stared at the wedding invitation sitting on my nightstand. Gold lettering, ivory paper, 2 names entwined like a promise that was already broken. Ibra Daniel de Lily. Ibra's hands trembled as I picked it up. The date just 3 weeks at me like a ticking clock. 3 weeks before my son would marry the woman who betrayed him. 3 weeks before he unknowingly stood beside the man who shared her betrayal. The thought made me sick. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Richard and Lily, standing in that dim apartment, bodies close, faces tender. That image haunted me, whispering, "You can't let him marry her." Vibri, by morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Lily. "Can you meet me today?" I asked. "Just us." Her voice. She trembled. "Mrs. Caldwell, I don't think—" "Ebrahim, it's not a request," I said gently. "It's a chance to make things right." Crefe. She agreed. Small cafe outside town. Quiet, tucked away. I chose a table near the window where the sunlight fell in long, forgiving streaks across the wood. When she arrived, she looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were puffy, her face pale. She clutched her purse like it was holding her together. "Brah, sit," I said softly. Brah, she did. For a while we just sat there. 2 women bound by silence and sin that wasn't entirely theirs. The clinking of cups, the low murmur of strangers filled the space between us. Bursan, Promber, Sonally. Finally, I spoke. "You say you love my son." "What?" she whispered. "Then you'll tell him the truth." "What?" Her head snapped up. "What? No, I can't. He'd never forgive me." Save him. Well, carrying this lie will save him? You think marrying him while carrying this lie will save him? You'll be living a lifetime of guilt. And when the truth comes out, because it always does, it'll destroy him. Even more. She shook her head. She shook her head, tears spilling. I made a mistake, a terrible one. But I love Daniel, I swear I do. Raul leaned forward. I leaned forward. Then prove it. Don't let him build his life on deceit. You owe him that much. Rory. She looked down. She looked down. Silent. Trembling. I can't, she whispered finally. Finally. He'll hate me. Then I will, I said. Her eyes widened. No, please, please don't. You'll ruin everything. I sighed softly. Everything is already ruined, Lily. I'm just trying to stop the bleeding. I stood, left some money on the table and walked away. As I reached the door, she called after me, her voice breaking. Mrs. Caldwell, please don't tell him it was his father. I turned back, met her eyes, and said quietly, that's not my secret to protect. Ibri. When I returned home, Richard was waiting. You met her, said flatter. You met her, he said flatly. I didn't bother asking how he knew. Yes, I did. Something. His jaw clenched. What did you say to her? The truth, I said. Something you've forgotten how to tell. Tibri stepped close. Anne, don't do this, please. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable, but don't destroy Daniel's future because of our mistakes. The man, I looked up at him. The man who used to make me feel safe. You're asking me to protect your reputation, Richard, not our son. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. You made your choice, I said. Now I'm making mine. That evening, Daniel came home unexpectedly, holding a box of decorations for the wedding reception. He was radiant, full of hope. Mom, look what Lily picked out, he said, pulling out a handful of small glass lanterns. She said you'd love them. Abru, I stared at the lanterns, fragile, beautiful, glowing faintly when the light caught them. I wanted to tell him right there, to shatter the illusion and save him from the humiliation that was coming. But looking at his face, so young, so full of faith, I froze. Cabro, I couldn't do it. Not yet. Not like this. Cabrar, so I smiled. They're beautiful, sweetheart. Ibrahim grinned, kissed my forehead, and went upstairs humming. Ibrahim and I stood there, my heart splitting in two. Ibrahim. That night, Richard and I barely spoke. The silence between us had grown thick, suffocating. I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to decide his fate. But my decision wasn't about him anymore. It was about Daniel. Abru. The next morning I called my sister Elaine. She was the only person I trusted with the truth. Abru Hamri. Her gasp echoed through the phone when I told her. Anne? Oh my God. What are you going to do? I don't know, I whispered, but I can't let my son walk into a marriage built on this. Brr, then tell him, she said. You'll hurt him, yes, but you'll save him from something worse. I closed my eyes. I'm afraid he won't believe me. He loves her too much. Then show him, she said gently. Don't just tell, show. Her words stayed with me. Over the next few days, I planned quietly. I went through Richard's phone records, dates, messages, small things he thought he'd erased. I found photos, calls, even receipts from a hotel not far from Lily's shop. Each discovery felt like another knife, but I kept going. Not for revenge, for proof. When I had everything I needed, I placed it all in a small envelope. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want shouting or chaos. I just wanted the truth to speak for itself. And it would, on the day of the wedding rehearsal. The day of the rehearsal arrived cloaked in sunlight, but the brightness felt cruel, too pure for what was about to unfold. I woke early, the air in the house strangely still. Richard had already left, claiming he needed to check on the venue setup. I knew exactly why he went early. To prepare himself. Protect my son from a life built on lies. The church was beautiful. White marble floors, soft music playing as the wedding coordinator walked people through the procession. Lily was radiant in her pale blue dress, her hair swept up neatly, every strand perfectly placed, but I could see the tremor in her hands. Mrs. Caldwell, her eyes darted to me the moment I entered. Kent. Mrs. Caldwell, she said softly, her voice cracking. I gave her a small nod. Richard was standing near the altar talking with the pastor. When his gaze met mine, he froze. The color drained from his face. Daniel walked up to me, smiling wide. Mom! Isn't it beautiful? Can you believe it's almost here? Brr, I smiled faintly. Yes, sweetheart, it's beautiful. Faye laughed, wrapping an arm around me. You've been so quiet lately, you okay? I looked at him, really looked at him, and something in me ached deep. I'm okay, I said softly. I just need you to listen to me later, no matter what happens. Can you promise me that? Brr, he frowned sly. I know, you're scaring me a little. I know, I whispered, but just trust me. Brr, the rehearsal went on. Laughter, small jokes. Everyone seemed wrapped in the warmth of what they thought was love. I sat in the front pew, clutching the small envelope in my lap. Inside were the printed messages, the hotel receipt, and a photo, the one that had shattered me the most. Richard and Lily sitting together at a cafe, hands touching. The intimacy between them was unmistakable. When the coordinator called for a short break, Daniel went to grab his jacket, and Richard followed him toward the exit. Lily lingered near the front, fidgeting with her necklace. Eyes, her breath shaky. That's wise. What's when I stood, Lily, I said quietly. She turned. Don't do this, stay. Oh, don't do this, she whispered. Steps. But I walked toward her anyway, steady steps echoing down the aisle. I have to. I have to. The few family members who were there turned to look. The laughter dimmed, replaced by curious silence. Daniel walked back in. Company. My voice was calm. I stopped near the altar, holding the envelope. My voice was calm, but my hands trembled. Daniel, I began softly, I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, don't you? He nodded slowly. Of course I do. What's going on? I took a breath. There's something you need to know before you say I do, something that will hurt you, but it's better you hear it from me than find out years later. Willie's voice broke. Please, Mrs. Caldwell, don't. I turned to her, my eyes steady. I gave you a chance to tell him yourself. Daniel. Then I looked at my son. Daniel. Lily has been having an affair. Burstful gasps. Rippled through the small room. Daniel froze, disbelief washing over his face. What? She's been seeing someone else, I said softly, for months. Bruce shook her head frantically. Daniel, it's not what you think, please. You think? He stepped back, hurt flashing across his features. Who? No one moved, and then, as the silence stretched, Lily broke. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel's voice was sharp now. Who? Lily, tell me who. Her lips trembled. She looked at me, then at the floor, and then he turned toward Richard, his father, and in that instant he knew. Because guilt doesn't need to speak, it lives in the eyes. Richard's face was pale, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Dad, Daniel said, voice low. Please tell me it's not, sir. When Richard didn't answer, the truth settled over the room like a shadow. Daniel staggered back a step, shaking his head. No, this can't. You're my father, Daniel, Richard began. But Daniel cut him off. Don't say my name. Deem. His voice cracked. You were supposed to protect me, both of you. Lily was crying openly now, her makeup smudging. Daniel, I'm sorry, I never meant. He looked at her like she was a stranger. Stranger, you said you loved me. Preferable. I did, she whispered. Then why him? Because he listened. It broke so. Meething in him. I saw it. His shoulders sagged, his hands trembling as he turned away from both of them. I walked to him, touched his arm gently. It's okay to feel broken, my son, but don't let their choices define yours. He looked at me then, tears welling. How long have you known? Long enough, I said quietly, long enough to wish it wasn't true. Breathing heavily, as though trying to stay upright. I can't do this, he muttered. I can't even look at either of you. He turned and walked out of the church. I followed him halfway, but stopped at the door, watching his figure disappear into the sunlight. Inside, Richard sank to the pew, face buried in his hands. Lily stood frozen, tears falling silently. The pastor cleared his throat, unsure what to say. Ibrahim and I just stood there, still, calm, hollow, because sometimes doesn't roar, sometimes it whispers in the ruins of what's left. That night, Daniel didn't come home. I found out later he'd gone to stay with a friend across town. He didn't answer my calls at first, but when he finally did, his voice was quiet. Thank you for telling me, Mom, he said. It hurts like hell, but thank you. I cried after hanging up, not out of sorrow but out of relief. The truth, though painful, had set us both free. As for Richard, he moved out 2 days later. Lily left town the following week. The wedding venue sent us a cancellation notice with deepest sympathies. In our house, once full of laughter and shared memories, felt like an empty museum of everything I'd lost. But even in that emptiness, I found something precious. Peace. The kind that only comes after the storm. The days that followed were painfully still. Silence became the only sound in that house, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes every creak of the floorboard feel like a memory calling your name. Richard's things were gone within a week. No goodbyes, no explanations, just boxes and dust and the faint scent of his kernel. Agni clinging to the walls. I didn't stop him. There was nothing left to say. Some nights I'd sit in the living room with the lights off, staring at the empty couch where he used to read, where we'd once laughed, where I had imagined growing old together. Now, it felt like a monument to everything that had quietly died long before that wedding rehearsal. But grief has its strange rhythm. It comes and goes like waves, one moment crashing, the next gently receding, leaving you standing, trembling, but still there. Daniel stayed away for nearly a month. When he finally came to visit, it was late afternoon. I saw his car from the window, and my heart began to pound, unsure of what kind of version of my son I was about to face. Angry, broken, distant. Ebro. He walked in quietly, carrying a small grocery bag. "I brought dinner." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." We sat down together at the kitchen table. It was strange at first, the silence heavy between us, like a language we both had forgotten how to speak. "Mom." Then he said, "Mom, I've been thinking a lot. About everything." I nodded, waiting. Ready. "I hate what they did," he said, voice low. "I hate how they made me feel like my whole life was some kind of joke." He looked at his hands. "But I also don't want to carry that hate forever. It's exhausting." My son, tears welled in my eyes. My son. Heartbroken, yes, but still gentle, still kind. Iberson. "You're stronger than I ever was," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "I got from you." That night, we talked for hours about forgiveness, about boundaries, about how sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we thought would protect us. He told me he'd started therapy, that he wanted to understand his pain instead of burying it. "I don't ever want to become like him," he said, "a man who hides behind lies." And in that moment, I felt proud, more proud than any mother could be, because the truth had destroyed the illusion, yes, but it had also set my son on a path to become a better man. Weeks turned into months. I learned to live differently, quietly, gently, intentionally. I started gardening again, something I hadn't done in years. I planted hydrangeas along the fence and watched them bloom in shades of blue and pink. Every petal felt like a small act of healing, a reminder that beauty could still grow in broken soil. I reconnected with old friends, women I had drifted away from during my marriage. We'd meet for coffee, share stories, laugh until our sides hurt. They reminded me of who I was before I became Richard's wife. I even joined a local community center that hosted story nights, evenings where people shared real, raw, unfiltered life experiences. At first, I just listened, but one night when it was my turn to speak, I told my story. Not out of bitterness, but truth, the kind of truth that doesn't scream, it simply breathes. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then someone's to clap. And another. And another. I cried that night, but not from sadness. From release. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, Daniel came by again. He looked lighter, not fully healed but healing. "I've been seeing someone," he said with a shy smile. Shan smile. Lighter. I raised an eyebrow. She's different," he said. "Gentle, honest. She knows what happened, and she doesn't judge me for it." I smiled softly. "That's good, sweetheart. You deserve someone like that." He hesitated, then looked at me. "Do you ever think you'll forgive Dad?" A question hung between us. I stared out at the garden, the flowers swaying gently in the wind, the sunlight catching on their edges. "I don't know if forgiveness is something I'll ever feel," I said slowly. "But I do know this. I don't wake up angry anymore, and maybe that's a kind of forgiveness too." She nodded thoughtfully. "I think it is." We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the world. That night, After he left, I wrote a letter I nay. Ver planned to send. Kiebrugge. It began simply, Abrahé, dear Richard, Abrugge, I hope you find peace one day, not because you deserve it to let your choices keep me chained to the past. I loved you once, deeply, foolishly, completely, and maybe that love blinded me to who you really were. But it also taught me something important, that love should never cost a person their dignity. You took so much from me, trust, certainty, family, but you didn't take my capacity to begin again. Yibur, I am not your victim anymore. I am a woman who survived you. Ibrahim, goodbye. Hebrew. When I finished, I folded the letter neatly, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it into a box of old memories. The same box where our wedding photos used to be. Abur. That box no longer felt like a coffin, it felt like closure. Months later, I stood in my garden again, watching the sun rise. The air was cool, the sky painted in gold and lavender. Ibra, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free from the need to be perfect. Ibra, free from the ache of betrayal. Abri, free to simply be. Ibri. I realized something that morning, something I wish every woman who's ever been broken could understand. Abur, sometimes, the ending you feared most is the one that saves you. Because peace doesn't always come wrapped in love. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in solitude, in truth, and in the strength to walk away. It's been almost 2 years since that day, the day my world cracked open and everything I thought I knew about love and family changed forever. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about them, Richard and Emily. Not with anger anymore, but with a quiet kind of curiosity. Where are they now? Did they ever feel remorse? Did they ever look back and wonder what they destroyed? Ebru, but the truth is, I don't really need to know, because I no longer live in the past they built. Abrahri. I've built something new, something honest. I often walk through my garden in the mornings. The air is still cool, the soil damp from the night rain, birds perch on the fence, and the sun peeks through the leaves just enough to make the world glow. Ibrahim. That garden became more than just a place to grow flowers. It became a symbol of my healing. Every time I watered those plants, I was really nurturing pieces of myself, the pieces I had forgotten while I was too busy being a wife, a mother, a caretaker. I used to believe love was about holding on, about forgiving no matter what. But now I know. Sometimes love is about letting go of people who choose deceit, letting go of pain that keeps you small, letting go so that peace can finally find its way in. Ibrahim. There's a particular afternoon I'll never forget. It was a few months ago, the day Daniel introduced me to his new girlfriend, Rachel. She was kind, warm, and she looked at him the way a person should look at someone they love, with trust, not with secrets. As I watched them together, I felt something shift inside me. Not jealousy, not regret, but gratitude. Gratitude that my son had learned early what took me half a lifetime to understand. Aber, that real love never hides in shadows. When they left that evening, I stood at the doorway and whispered a quiet prayer. Not for revenge or even justice, but for peace. For them, for me, for all of us who have ever had to start over after betrayal. In the months that followed, I found new ways to fill my days. I began volunteering at a local shelter, helping women who'd left difficult marriages find their footing again. I listened to their stories of heartbreak, of fear, of quiet endurance, and I saw myself in each of them. And in helping them, I healed a little more each day. Ibraqui. Because sometimes healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about using your pain to build something better. Abur. There are still moments when the loneliness creeps in, like when I make tea for one, or when I see an old couple holding hands at the park. Abur, but even in those moments, there's peace, because loneliness isn't the same as emptiness, not anymore. Abur he, n. Ow, it's just space. Abur space I've earned. Space where I can breathe. One evening, I found myself sitting on the porch again, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. I thought about everything. The shock, the pain, the confrontation, the quiet recovery. If I could go back to that woman who stood frozen in the doorway, watching her husband with her son's fiancée, I'd tell her something simple. Ebersher, you will survive this. You will not only survive, softer and wiser than you ever imagined. Brum. This isn't the end, it's the unveiling. Bibrawi, because betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is how you rise from it, quietly, gracefully, on your own terms. I know many of you listening might be in that place right now, the place where your heart is, breaking, and you can't see past the pain. Maybe someone you trusted lied to you. Maybe a friend turned into a stranger. Maybe a love you thought would last forever ended in silence. If that's you, listen to me carefully. Kibur, your story isn't over. Kiburkri. And it doesn't end with the people who broke you. The same way seasons change, pain will shift too. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and notice the air feels lighter. The coffee tastes sweeter. The silence isn't as heavy anymore. Ibrhi, that's healing. Ibrhi, that's hope. Ibrhi, that's you coming back to life. I don't know where life will take me from, or maybe I won't. But what I do know is that I will net peace for the illusion of love. Because love without honesty isn't love at all. It's dependency dressed in romance. And peace, my dear, is worth more than any promise spoken through lying lips. So, if you've ever been betrayed, let this be your reminder, Hubber. You can walk through the fire and still come out whole. You can lose everything you thought defined you and still discover that you are enough just as you are. And sometimes, the ending that shatters your world is juice. Tea, the beginning of the life you were meant to live. When I finish recording this story, I'll pour myself a cup of tea, sit by the window, and watch the evening light settle over my garden. I'll think about all the women and men listening right now, holding their own hearts together with trembling hands. And I'll whisper to you what I wish someone had whispered to me back then. Giwerki, you are not what they did to you. You are what you do next. So tell me, my dear listeners, if you were in my place, would you have stayed and fought for that broken marriage? Or would you have walked away, like I did, to protect what little peace you had left? Hebrew, let me know in the comments. And if my story spoke to you tonight, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes the stories that hurt the most are the ones that remind us we're still alive. This was my story. A birthray. The story of how I caught my husband with my son's fiancée and found myself again in the ashes. Thank you for listening.